good Shabbos, everybody, and welcome. In the 17th century, there was a man who was credited with the founding of the Hasidic movement. It's not actually accurate. He didn't actually found it, but he actually rejuvenated it. And his name was, he was known as the Baal Shem Tov. Baal means the master of, Shem Tov, a good name, the Baal Shem Tov. He had a grandson, and his grandson was known as Rav Nachman of Breslav. He was one of the most creative, influential, and profound individuals of the Hasidic masters. And he was the founder of the Breslav Hasidic sect. Now, as you heard last night from Rabbi Moses, Breslav, or Breslav, is a town in the Ukraine where Rav Nachman spent the end of his life. However, some in the Hasidic world believe that Breslav actually comes from a Hebrew, two words, meaning bris lev, the covenant of the heart. From his youth, he followed a path of asceticism and prayer, and though he wanted his followers not to abuse themselves physically, he emphasized living with joy and happiness. He was a passionate individual, given to intense swings of emotions. And these he put towards the service of God and spoke often of how to find God even in the low states of mind, even when you're at your lowest, and how to serve him when you're going through your highs in life. Reb Nachman of Breslav famously became known for one of his great sayings, which is mitzvah Gdולה להיות בשמחה תמיד, which means it is a great mitzvah to always be happy. In other words, to find happiness in everything that happens in our lives. For the past 3 months, we as a congregation and as individuals have had the distinct honor and pleasure to experience firsthand some of the teachings of Reb Nachman. We were able to do so through our beloved cantor Boaz, who is a follower of the, I like to say, Breslav Hasidut, clearly does his best to live up to the teachings of Rav Nachman, and his joy is contagious. It helps us raise all of our spirits when he davens, and indeed when we are in his presence. Now I have to tell you that I've always wondered about this mitzvah. When Rav Nachman says mitzvah להיות בשמחה תמיד, it's always it's a mitzvah to always be happy, because how can you do that? It's not an easy mitzvah to fulfill. As Rav Nachman himself pointed out, he said human nature is to draw itself to gloom, depression, on account of life's vicissitudes and misfortunes. And every human being, doesn't matter who you are, is filled with suffering. And therefore a person has to exercise great effort in forcing himself to be happy at all times and to bring himself to joy in any way he can, even if it's with silliness. Yet Cantor Boaz makes it look easy. He makes it look natural. One of the Hebrew terms for a person leading prayer services is shaliach tzibur, the agent or messenger of the public. And that is because he is carrying our prayers to God. And when Cantor Boaz leads our davening, we feel his kavanah. We feel his focus. We know that it is exactly what he is doing, communing with God for him, for his family, and for us. There's a famous teaching in the Likutei Maharam, which is Rabbi Nachman's magnum opus, that explains how prayer is like putting together a bouquet for God. And it says as follows: when a person stands up to pray and recites the words of the prayers, he is gathering beautiful buds, flowers, and blossoms. Like someone walking in the field, picking lovely blossoms, lovely flowers, one at a time, until he makes a whole bouquet. And after that, he picks more, one by one, making another bouquet. And then what does he do? He joins the bouquets together very masterfully. And so he goes on picking and gathering more and more lovely bouquets. This is likewise true of prayer, says Rav Nachman. A person goes from letter to letter until several letters join together to form a single word. And he does the same for a second word. And then the two words are joined. And he goes on gathering more letters and more words as he's praying until he completes a single blessing. And after that, he goes on gathering more and more until he completes what he wants to do. And he gathers more and more, from avot to gevurot, from gevurot to kedushot. And so he goes on, further and further. Who can extol the great splendor of the gleanings and the gatherings that a person makes through the words of the prayers? My friends, you're all here today to recognize that this is the last Shabbat that the Cantor Boaz will be carrying out our prayers to God on our behalf until his return to us in the spring, as he's returning home to Israel tomorrow. As much, and as we are going to miss Cantor Boaz, remember, mitzvah, Gdולה, להיות בשמחה תמיד. It is a great mitzvah to always be happy. After all, you can never complain about a Jew going to Israel. Never. Rabbi Nachman did an interpretation of a famous verse in the prophet Micha. I don't know if you're aware of it, Chazan. What did he say? He said, mortal, he told you that what is good and what God demands from you, nothing more than to act justly. Love chesed, love kindness. Walk modestly with God your Lord. So what does Rav Nachman do with this sentence, with this pasuk? He explains that the reference with God your Lord corresponds to the land of Israel. For whoever lives in Israel is like one who has a God. And this is because the land of Israel is made from God's powerful works. Now, yes, we are going to miss Cantor Boaz, each one of us, in our own very personal ways. We're going to miss him while he's in Israel. Jewish tradition teaches us to always foster an attitude of gratitude. Be grateful for what we have, not regretful over what we don't have. We see this reflected in this week's Torah portion. Noah it's the story of the flood, as you know. It is a parsha that's popular with children. It's seen as the celebration of animals. Some communities even do a blessing for pets on this Shabbat. There's happy, clappy children's songs about the parasha. But it's actually a very terrifying story. If you understand the story of Noah properly, you cannot help but be terrified by it. God was so upset with the world that he destroyed nearly everything. Men, women, children, lots of cute little animals. God pushed the planetary reset button and decided to restart over. Noah saved 2 of every animal so that they could reproduce and repopulate the world. Well, except for the dinosaurs. I guess they were a bit too big to fit in the ark. but everything else was washed away. Noah's time on the ark was not very pleasant. Can you imagine the hard physical labor everyone had to deploy to keep the animals fed? The smells. It must have been terrible. Once the floodwaters receded, the very first thing that Noah did was to build an altar and offer a sacrifice to God, to thank God. He expressed his gratitude, his thanks. He didn't complain. He said, God, what the heck did you do to me? You stuck me with all these verstunkener animals. He didn't say that. He was grateful that his family were now safe. And God accepted his offering and made a covenant to never destroy the world by flood again, with the rainbow as a reminder of that covenant. The second thing Noah did, he planted a vineyard. He made wine from grapes, and then he got drunk. And who can blame him? My gosh, he went through an incredible trauma. And so instead of being sad that Cantor Boaz is not here half the year, we should be incredibly grateful that he is here half the year. And he's here half the year because of the forward-looking and understanding of our president and our board, who were prepared to adopt a new model. A new model that is unknown here in Canada, but a model that has worked in other places. So to you, my dear president, vice presidents, and board, we are eternally grateful to you. Cantor Boaz is an inspiration to us all. He has walked the path from secular Jew to devout Chassid. He knows how to connect with people who didn't grow up surrounded by all the Jewish traditions, and he can also connect with the most deeply religious among us. The path of Chassidut is all about the Breslav, the covenant with the heart, about bringing not just your intellect, but your heart and your soul into your prayers. We are blessed that Cantor Boaz shares both the wisdom and the spirit of Chassidut with us during his time here. And we wish him well during his time in Israel. We say au revoir, adios, lihitraot, not goodbye. We look forward to his return in the spring, and we say to him, Tzeitcha b'shalom uvoecha b'shalom. Go in peace and come back to us in peace. Shabbat shalom.